Welcome to It Begins With Us, the podcast about domestic violence abuse. It is our mission to help anyone in a domestic violence situation. We started this podcast
as a safe space for survivors to tell their stories.
Completely confidential.
We can disguise your voice.
You can be off camera, and we're here to listen. Let's get started. Hey guys, welcome to It Begins With Us. We are on episode 4.
Yes, welcome. Today we do have our beautiful special guest Mindy with us today, and she's with Behavioral Therapy and Care. Glad to have you with us, Mindy.
Oh, thank you for having me.
She's also a survivor.
I am. Yep. Many times.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your therapy business. What is it that you do?
Okay. Yeah, so I have 2 degrees. One of them is psychology, and my other degree is in mental health counseling. I worked for over 8 years with health and welfare for a company in town here, and helped children between 3 and 21 gain services for behavioral intervention. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to branch off and open up behavioral therapy and care. And I'm just an independent contractor with health and welfare and working with kiddos I specialize with trauma and kids that have faced trauma in the foster care system and, have a lot of diagnoses that assist in behavioral challenges.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely need that around this community.
So it's true. There's a lot of need in that area.
Mm-hmm. So how many years did you experience? I think we've talked a little bit about this personally. Like, how many years were you in a domestic violence relationship?
Well,
she's like, let me.
And I've had 2 different layers of trauma in that capacity. My first relationship, I was married at 17 and had 3 children and never fought with the gentleman, and he ended up being what today we would classify as the gaslighting narcissist, mentally, never physical, but it was quite damaging, and that where that comes out today, it's kind of a relief seeing it. When you see it on TikTok or people are playing those videos where gaslighting comes up and you're like, man, that was my reality, and then they just said deal with it. In the system, it was something we just had to endure in the late 90s, early 2000s. It was just not too long ago. It feels like that then it just was something that felt like you swept under the carpet and you just had to deal with it because nobody heard you.
Right. Yeah. Because there's no bruises, there's no evidence. Yeah. I went through it for 10 years, so I totally understand. And it's harder to get out of a situation like that than it is a physical one. Because a physical one, at least you see the bruises and the abuse physically. You can see it with your eyes. Yeah. Whereas the gaslighting, the manipulation, the lies, all of that, you don't see it.
It's true. In fact, I guess that's probably the one that's the hardest for me to endure. And I watch it. The sad thing is I watch forms of this happening in kiddos and families that I work with, and I'm just like, man, you forget how much you really went through, and not just that moment in time that was encapsulated that I went through it. It's been a lifetime. That my children are adults now, and I still had another issue that they don't talk to the man. He lives in a couple states away, where my son gave up on me as a parent because of alienation, and this is how your mother was, and it truly wasn't. It was somebody's formed opinion, and it's sad. It truly is. I've watched a lot of people go through it, and they're like, they feel defeated because they've been led to believe that they are this monster and this person that has led you to believe all these lies about yourself and lowered your self-esteem by doing that.
So I want to ask, obviously you were with him for a long time, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When did you start noticing these things, like the red flags, the bad attitude, the mistreatment? When did you notice that?
I noticed it when we started becoming distant, and we went years. I've known him since I was 15, and we went years of never having arguments, and had a few children. We had 3 children together, and it wasn't until our third one, I was pregnant with him, and I just started noticing differences where it wasn't on this pedestal. I wasn't talked to and spoke to as a respectable woman. I became derogatory remarks, and just more arguments started happening, and so divorce was ensuing, and things became more very apparent. It was more of like a sabotage. Let me sabotage who you are, what you've done to me. It was just a constant, you're gonna pay.
How old were your children when you left?
My oldest, they were every 2 years, and my oldest was 4, and my second that was in between, and my littlest was just born in 2000. He was not even 1.
Oh, wow.
We were ready to divorce. Yeah. Okay. And then I had left that situation for the next best hero that I thought came along, and deserving, in the mindset that I was in, ended up in a physical violent relationship.
So you're opposite than me. I went to a physical abuse, then to the mental abuse.
Yeah, it's almost like when I was going through that, it was my ex-husband was capitalizing on these moments and, my downfall and highlighting it to the children that your mother is this horrible person, and then would take the kids and run off, and then I'd be strapped in custody battles because I couldn't afford it, and it was a lot, and then I was having to deal with my new significant other who was cheating and doing drugs and physically being violent and drinking, and I remember being so scared that, his family's going to give him something to drink tonight, he's going to come home, he's going to beat me up, and I didn't lead a life full of abuse like this, so it is kind of abnormal for me anyway to have tolerated that. But I would have to put makeup on to go to work because I had strangulation marks on my neck. And then I would wear long sleeves, and people were like, why do you wear this in the summer,
Yeah.
But what people don't know is what you don't want them to see.
You were hiding, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I know that all too well, having to cover up and hide and wear things in the summer that most people wouldn't, and then they change, and then they start hitting you in places that aren't visible at all, so it doesn't matter what you wear because everything's hidden.
Yeah, and I had the perfect excuse because, like we were talking about earlier, I'm always cold.
Right.
So for me, it was normal to wear a sweater and turtleneck in the summer.
Right.
Especially because I worked in a deli, so it was kind of cold in there. So it was totally fine for me to wear something covered up like that.
Nothing stood out to anybody else. Yeah. And all this time, I felt like I deserved it. I mean, I already had an ex-husband that had changed my mindset, and I allowed it for so long. And then this one comes swooping in at a whole different level, and it just, my mindset was in a bad place.
Yeah. And I think we've talked about that the last couple episodes, is this pattern that we get put into. And
yeah. I want to bring something up that I feel like it's important subject to talk about. I want to talk about red flags because a lot of times I think in the beginning we have our rose glasses on. We see all the pretty things and all the things we want to see, that we don't realize what's going on, and we don't see it as a red flag. But I feel like young women getting into these relationships, before they go through them, if they had somebody to listen to, like, us especially, maybe if they heard us talk about what we went through or what we've seen, maybe they would think about it twice, if they experience. Yeah.
Oh gosh, that's what I love about social media platforms today, is that it's become such a transparency for individuals like me in the late 90s, 2000s, where it was like we didn't really have that quite yet. Or today, I mean, even if you have it, there's still some people that are refrained from getting onto those platforms, but for good reason. It was knowledge. It's knowledge to educate those who.
And it was embarrassing to talk about.
Yes.
Embarrassing because you want to be looked at as a strong person, and that you're not somebody that you let people push you around, especially hit you.
Right.
I know that was my biggest problem and like why I didn't talk about it. I think I'm lucky where when I experienced it in 2010, stuff like this was starting to come up. So I had resources where like I would go on Google and Google things like, why is he watching porn these many hours? Or like, why does he want me to do this? And why is this? And so I figured all these things about him, like, this isn't okay.
Right.
You know, I actually was having a conversation the other day with my children about, they asked me how I met their father. And I said, oh, yeah, well, I met him at a dance. And they said, no, you didn't. We just had this conversation with my dad this weekend when we were there. And he said, you guys met at a family party, like at a quinceañera. And I said, no, we met at a dance. My dad doesn't do that. My dad doesn't go to dances. That's bad. You go to dances. That's really bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would he tell them that? You know, like he's always saying how bad of a person I am, that I do this, that I do that, things that he doesn't like. We literally met at a dance. Actually, it was a bar where there was a dance. I was underage. I was 19. It was allowed to go in there as long as you weren't drinking if you were over 18. After I went to bed, I was so confused on why he would tell my kids that he met me at a family event instead of a dance. And it like just played in my head. And I remember thinking like I had a conversation a couple weeks after we met on the phone. And, you know, I was all giggly and like, oh, this guy's paying attention to me. He's this and that. Like my parents want him to be the guy that my parents want me to be with. And thinking like he's perfect. And then he goes, do you believe in love at first sight? And I said, I don't know, I've never experienced it, but maybe. And he said, I do. He's like, I saw you walking through those doors, and when I seen you walking through those doors, he's like, it was like a light just radiated on you. And I walk the whole way to the front of the bar, and I could not lay my eyes off of you, and I just knew it was you. And he said, you were talking to a girl, and I went up to her, because I went to ask her to dance, and she turned me down. He's like, do you remember I asked her to dance? And I said, yeah. And he said, the reason I asked her to dance and not you is because I wanted your ego to go down, for you not to feel like you were all that, so you wouldn't turn me down. I should have known. Like, that was like 2 weeks into talking to him. That man for 10 years always just pushed me and pushed me and pushed me down. Just wanted to make me feel less of myself.
Yeah.
And I did not know that those words that he said to me were for him to make me feel less of myself. Him asking the other girl to dance instead of me. I mean, I'm a confident person, so to me it didn't mean anything. But he wanted it to mean something to me. He wanted me to feel less of myself. Like the other girl was prettier than me, or she was worth more because he went to her and not me. And it's things like that. When somebody tells you, you know, who they are, believe them.
It's like looking back now, you see that red flags. I see you like intermittently picking up on the red flags now in hindsight. It's like, but when we're trapped in that moment, anybody for that matter, that's in the same similar situations, because it all plays out the same, just in different contexts. They all mastermind the same art.
Yes.
And it is horrific. It's how can I suppress you? How can I make you feel belittled? How can I make you feel less so you don't have any power, so you don't see this coming, so you don't ever want to step up or lose me, step up to me or have some sort of leverage over me. So I got to keep you feeling smaller and controlled, so that you don't want to leave, so that I am the one that basically you never want to leave. I'm the pivot in this whole scenario. And we're so blinded by this injustice that, you sit back now and I know I can do the same thing, Maria, and I'm just like, gosh, I wouldn't pick up on these things today, ever. I would jump so far away from that if I had been presented that today and having the knowledge that I have gone through. I'd be like, nope, never doing that again.
Yeah. I went through a couple other things that like I see now, and I'm like, you know what? I got out of it before it got serious, and I'm glad I did. But when it was happening, I wasn't seeing it as a red flag. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't see it as it was enough for me to leave. I let it keep going, but I'm glad I didn't let it keep going more. But there was somebody I dated after my divorce, had been dating him for 1 month exactly. We walked into the mall, states away. Okay, it was my first time getting on a plane. I had never rode a plane before, so it was my first time on a plane, states away where I didn't know anybody. And when we get there, we went to the mall, and he said, hey, like he grabbed my hand and said, hey, let's go to the jewelry store. They have so many jewelry stores here. And I said, for what? And he said, let's go pick out your ring. And mind you, I had barely been divorced for 4 months by that time. 4 months. I knew I wasn't ready to get married, you know? And for him to say he was already looking for a ring to marry me, I mean, I'm flattered.
Yeah. Every girl's going, what?
I'm flattered, but how could you know you want to marry somebody right there and then, like a month later, you know?
Right.
You got to take your time. You got to get to know the person, especially me after all the things I've already endured.
Right.
You know, I'm just way more careful now. And I had this gut feeling like, oh my gosh, if I tell him what I'm feeling right now, like I'm going to get left here, 10 states away. And how am I going to get back home? I don't even know where I'm at. Like if he gets mad at me. And then just other instances that happened that I was just like, okay, this isn't okay. And then this isn't okay. And I let it continue. I didn't last very long. But I still let those things happen. Where right now, I would not let those things happen. I've met other people now that I'm like, nope, this is where it stops. And it's done right here. And I will not continue the relationship or me talking to you because you did this. Mm-hmm. I am strong on my boundaries. I set my boundaries high because I know what I'm worth. I know who I am. And I don't need nobody to put me down or break those boundaries. Like for instance, with that same person, I'm on birth control because of a medical condition that I have. He would take my birth control out during sex. And he would joke around like, swim, little buddy, swim. Ugh. He didn't have any kids, and I had kids. I'm not ready to have more kids.
No.
I have not gotten, my tubes tied or anything because I don't know if one day I'll meet somebody that doesn't have kids, and that will be a deal breaker. Right. But I really don't want more kids. Mm-hmm. I am not closed off to the, to the option. But for somebody to manipulate that and try to have kids with me when I'm against it at the moment, like,
that's okay.
It's got to be a communication between us. Yeah. For him to try to get me pregnant on purpose, that's a red flag.
Huge.
That is abuse.
Yeah.
That is not okay. And so, like, I see these things now, I'm like, I should have never let that happen. Yeah. The first time, like, it wasn't okay. Or just joking around, like, let me just take it out. Like, and if it happens, it happens. No.
Yeah, no.
We don't need to let those things happen.
Right. It
is not okay. It is against our will.
It truly is.
I mean, and I'm not saying, like, men are the only ones that do this, There's
women.
There's women that do it to men, too.
Yes.
Yep.
They will intentionally not, take your birth control if we go back to that, or, nowadays they call it baby trapping, or, or making you feel like you're obligated to stay. It is rough. It is both sides. There's no discrimination on gender on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope one day we get, men also to come in here, because I feel like men are still in this stigma where they're not allowed to talk about abuse that they go through.
It's true.
I would love to have men come in here and tell us, like, what their red flags were, or the stuff that they've experienced. Because I know we talk about what we've experienced as women, and it's very common, you know.
Yeah, it would be nice to have
interesting to hear.
Yeah,
to hear their side of it.
yeah, and we're totally open to that.
I agree. I think that this day and age, we're breaking down some walls that need to be broken for generations now, and let it echo. Let it echo, no matter who that touches, no matter who this, maybe that one person this impacts, that you've done the right thing. Maybe they can relate. Oh my gosh, I know, I didn't want to think like that, but it is sounding so familiar. It is, and it just comes in different shapes and forms. It's like a shape-shifting experience, and then a lot of times they see us as very caring and compassionate women or men, and that you have this soft guard, and they take advantage of your kindness, and not everybody, but some do, and men too. I've seen the opposite in dealing in the mental health world, where the men are also taken advantage of because they're kind or compassionate, or they're seen for doing something, and then it gets turned on them too, in different ways. Like, I wasn't flirting with you, I was actually being a friend. I've had to deal with scenarios like that, and then they have to try and back it up because they're a man. They have to recorrect how that person's seeing them. So yeah, I can see where a male's perspective would also be welcomed here. Yeah.
In your line of work, do you see a pattern at all, like with what type of people you help?
Yes. Right now, what the hardest part for me is I have such a passion in working with individuals, like especially kiddos, because I feel like they're the innocent victims in this. And a lot of the times when I work with individuals, it's the families, their environment. And as much as you have to try and be an impartial source of help and light, you try and offer as much guidance and soft, like, this is what I would try doing, suggestive measures. A lot of times it's met with, okay, and then they continue on about their home environment, and nothing changes. And the hard part is just showing up and notice that something's wrong with my child. How come you can't fix it? Why are they constantly getting in trouble? Well, I can bring it so much to your knowledge, to your table, and be like, hey, this is what I would try. This is what I see going on. Can we try this? And it's always met with ignorance, or okay, yeah, and I don't want to do anything about it. I hate to always say that, but a lot of times it's the kids, the environment they've grown up in. Or the diagnoses that impedes that.
Right. Like, the parents want you to fix their kids, but they don't want to accept the responsibility for the way that their kids are behaving or suffering.
Or life choices. I mean, I've worked with kiddos that have been products of divorce or domestic violence in where they then become the parent. The kid feels like they have to be the parent to parent the parent. And my job at this point is to be like, hey, you're still young. You don't have to worry about that. But they do. I mean, it's almost like a false expectation. I'm like, don't do this, but do this. I know that who doesn't want to help their parents when they're struggling? And then they feel like, oh, my mom's so blind to this. I need to help her see this. I literally work with an individual on a regular basis. I need to help this person see this, so that they can get better, they can make better choices. And my only survival is showing up for this person, because their environment changes so much that there's no consistency for them. It's tough. It's tough to sit back and watch. And it's like, I know that there's more people out there that go through this, because I know many people that are dealing with the same obstacles, and they're seeing the same thing over and over again, is that the kids are paying dividends for adult choices. And sometimes we're so wrapped up. I know I was a part of this, even when my children were growing up, is you get so caught up in the abuse that you're like, oh my gosh, I know this is impacting my kids. I'm going to try and like soften the blow so this doesn't hurt them as badly. But it still does. The earshot away, that everything's, it does impact them.
Yeah. I feel so sad saying that, like, this person that you work with, I can just see their future, like, in their relationship, that they're going to try to do the same thing.
It is generational. If you don't break it, they know this as a staple. I mean, we know this as raising our children. You were parented a certain way. It's what you put a spin on it that, for what works for you, and then you keep going forward. But we still have some of those characteristics that aren't so healthy or don't, aren't as appropriate in today's world, or maybe they weren't even appropriate then, to be honest, It is tough, and you just have to offer them that different lens and hope that they pick up on it along the way. In working with them, it's just that being, just like you mentioned, being around these people, getting that self-confidence, that contagious positivity, and that's all I hope. Like, if I can try and make that one difference to this kiddo, and I know you're on a fast track to seeing a lot of bad stuff, and you want to change this for your parents, and you want to make this outcome look different. But in the meantime, please, when you see this when you're an adult, see how this changing, see what it looks like right now that you're looking at, that your parent is going through, and change that dynamic for yourself, because you deserve better.
Yeah.
You deserve to be treated right. You deserve to feel like you deserve better. You see those flags, you understand them. And even implanting this in your children and saying, hey, look, I went through this and it wasn't okay. It wasn't okay that I had to go through this, and I didn't want to involve you as much as possible, but I also don't want you to not know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very good. I agree. Yeah, it's so sad. I think that is the biggest thing that I promote on the show is, like, we need to do better for our kids so they don't go through this.
Right.
So they learn from our mistakes. So we teach them how to do better. So they have the resources, the knowledge to know, because knowledge is everything.
It is.
And you want your kids to be comfortable being able to come and talk to you about things, right? So I think, you two do a great job with speaking about it, and I think it's great when the kids are here and they can hear stories, because I think it kind of sets a safety platform for them to know that it's okay to go talk to my mom.
Yeah. And even more empowering that it's okay if I need to take care of myself or want to be aware of people that aren't going to be healthy for me. Like, I think that's a good perspective, that you have shown that you're gaining this momentum in self-care and how you see yourself in the world today after somebody for so long suppressed you.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the biggest thing is we are all capable of making these huge mistakes and being wrong because we couldn't catch ourselves, we didn't love ourselves enough to change this for ourselves, or however we've seen it in that moment, or however somebody might feel right now that's in this current situation that's like, man, I don't dare say something, this could happen to me, they might, something bad could happen. I mean, these red flags are real. You can't change what's ingrained in that individual, no matter how hard you try. I mean, you see it face value. And I think that's the important part, is being very honest with these kiddos and ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and having the knowledge, or just the comfortability of opening up to talk about any subject with anybody. I mean, not just anybody, but like people you trust.
Yes.
Especially your parents. Sometimes even parents don't know they don't have the knowledge all the time. Mm-hmm. But I wish I could have talked to somebody. I mean, it was taboo to talk about sex.
Sure.
And for me I knew it was weird, but if I would have asked somebody, like, is it normal to be having sex 10 to 15 times a day? Mm-hmm. It's absolutely not normal.
Right.
Every single day. If I knew, because I didn't know anything besides that. If I would have known, I would have known there was something wrong there, mm-hmm. And I would have been able to get away from it faster. But instead, I went through all this sexual abuse, rape. spousal rape, which I didn't even know was a thing until I was going through court. They're like, no, if you tell your husband no, it is totally okay to tell him no.
Yeah, the marriage doesn't change that factor.
Right.
Yep.
And I remember I had the conversation with the prosecutor when he told me that, and it just opened my eyes to so many other things. And I'm like, well, he would do this and he would do that. He would tell me that I was his wife. He owned me. He owned my body. And then going to my best friends and telling me, I left him, like, he's going through this, like, he's getting charged this, and that. And for one of them to say, well, just because you didn't want to put out doesn't mean that's called rape. Ugh. My best friends. That was so hard to hear that, from somebody that I loved. And it's like...
Even harder to know that they think that that's normal.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, another flag. Like,
But I think that's like in the Hispanic culture as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like women are very, very dominant to their men.
Right.
And I think that's all they know. That's all they grew up with. Like, your husband wants to have sex with you. You need to go have sex with him.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Your husband wants you to get up at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning to make him food for work. Mm-hmm. You better get up and go do it. So I think it's just such a, I think, what would you call it?
Like a cultural stigma.
Yes. That needs to be broken at some point because
it's not okay.
It's not okay.
It's even religious. Beyond
Absolutely.
Culture, religious. Yeah. I've seen that in many religious capacities. And I being non-biased, I've seen a lot of differences in that. And in individuals, it's tough. It's tough to help them see differently and know that you don't have to, you have a voice, you don't have to succumb to what's uncomfortable and what goes against you as a human and feeling safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And that just brought up, that comment your friend made to you. That would be the very first thing I would think of is...
that, and you think about it, too, you were letting them know in your own words, I don't feel like this is okay, and you open up to say something, and then they shut you down. So then you go back into the shell, and you're like, okay, this is why I don't say anything, because nobody's going to believe me.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And that's what is so hard. And I feel like even with all of the teenagers or even young adults that are facing that today, it's going to be the same thing. You're going to try and open up and be like, hey, I need help, without saying you need help. Mm-hmm. Then people are going to be like, they're not like that. Mm-hmm. And then they shut you down and you're like, oh, well, maybe they're not like that. And then you tell yourself oh, it's not that bad. Yeah. It's just like what Cindy said. Sometimes you think about it and you're like, it wasn't that bad until you're away from it. And you're like, that was bad. That was wrong. It wasn't okay.
Yeah.
What would you tell the young girls today that are going through what you've experienced and what I've experienced? I always think about this. What would I tell somebody today that was going through the stuff I did? Oh, such a deep thought.
Please find your circle.
Mm-hmm. Please
find somebody that supports you, that believes in you, that is there to help you, but also know who you can trust.
Yeah, because so many people suffer in silence. I mean, let's be honest. Absolutely. I did for years thinking, oh, man, this was just a moment. This was a bad day. This was a drinking experience. He was high. Not every day's like this. Justifying the unjustifiable. Yeah. I think so many women, men, they find themselves in these situations. I love them so much. This was just a terrible experience, or I pissed him off, or she pissed me off, or, something like that. But yes, having that trusted go-to friend or support system, I would be like, the old me, if I had that back then, and come to think about it, I had nobody. I had my family, and my family was so naive about it, and I just was like, they just didn't like it because I got married and pregnant early in life. I didn't go with the flow, and I probably disappointed them. So I was already encapsulated in myself and thinking I disappointed my family. Mm-hmm. But not only that, I was disappointing myself. I was isolated. And my dad professes this daily to this day, that these abusers isolate you. They keep you away from those people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's another red flag is, in the beginning, it's like, oh, well, they tell you everything that they see wrong with those people, any of your circle, they'll tell you everything that seems wrong with them. So that way you can start thinking like they're bad people. They're not worth your time. They're not there for you. They don't love you. So that way they're the only ones there for you.
They're trying to get you to leave me. That was always the one that I was told. They're trying to get you to look at other guys because are you trying to do that? Like, and then it brought it full circle back to you. Like, that was one of my biggest red flags is why is it always my fault?
Yeah.
Like, why does always things come back to me? Like, you never do something wrong. Like, today I see that a lot and I'm really quick to point it out. Like, when I see that when even working with kiddos or adults, I'm like, but wait a second, it takes two. Like, that mentality of that school of thinking, that ill thinking that we were suppressed by is, what did you do to suggest that behavior? Why would you reach outside of this? Because I'm the only one you should be talking to.
Yeah.
I had a friend back when I first got remarried, and I remember she invited me to a barbecue, and my ex-husband wasn't going to be home. And I told him, hey, like, I've always been like, you don't ask for permission. You let them know where you're going to be. Because I don't believe in asking for permission. It's not we don't live in the olden days. We don't have to ask for permission. But you need to communicate where you're going to be. So I let him know, hey, I was invited to this place. Like, I'm going there. And, it's going to be from this time to this time. And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you not to go, but I don't like that person because they hang out with so-and-so. And so I felt like I was going against his will if I went.
Yep.
And my friend had gone through probably over 15 years of domestic violence. So she knew it all too well. And she said, Maria, I don't want us to not be friends anymore after this conversation, but I'm going to be straight up with you. The way he spoke to you when he told you, I don't like it. I really hope I'm wrong, but him telling you that he doesn't want you to go because of who I hang out with, that's not even going to be there. That's his way of controlling you. And I want to be wrong. I hope years from now that we're not going to look back at this and say, you know what, you were right. She said, I hope I'm not right. And, 10 years later, I'm sure, right. I'm sure she'll listen to this episode and she knows who I'm talking about. I haven't talked to her about it, but I'm sure she knows. She probably, she's a good friend, so she wouldn't come and be like, see, I told you so.
Right.
But she knew.
And she's like, I'm glad she's healthy today.
Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. It goes back to your question, though, like, what would we tell the young ones that are going through that? And I would just say, trust your gut. The second that they say something and it doesn't sit well,
doesn't feel good. Yeah.
Then that
you're second guessing it. Yep.
Don't ever second guess what that feeling is because that feeling's telling you for a reason.
Yep.
And don't ever second guess that.
I agree.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's good. Yeah. I would probably just say, like you said, find, because I personally have never been in a domestic relationship or anything, but I've learned so much since, being a part of all of this. And I think just being able to find even that one person that you can trust and that would believe you. And I find my daughter sent me the other day a picture, with in the bathroom stalls at her high school, they're putting up flyers for domestic violence.
Good.
And hotlines that you can call as just a safe space for these girls. And she also said they have them in the boys' bathrooms as well. So I think it's so good that this subject is opening up, so many doors and to young people and not just older people, because it is happening.
Yes. It starts from being young.
Yes. Yeah. And it's just happening so much more. Domestic violence, mental health. I'm so glad mental health is being talked about a lot more. because I feel like people are embarrassed to talk about it.
Right.
Just like they are, about being in abusive relationships, but just those resources, being out there and finding those people.
Yeah.
That's so true.
I think another thing, like, it's so hard to believe also when we get out of relationships that were this bad, is that for a long time we tried to paint this beautiful picture of our relationships online that was never there.
Right.
Just because that's what everybody does.
Of course. Yeah.
I know when the first time I got married, and the subject was talked about, like, I was getting divorced, but you had such a beautiful relationship. You guys always posted pictures together. You guys were always doing this and doing that, and I do remember, like, that hurt the people. I felt like people didn't believe me just because they saw the good on the outside, but they didn't see the inside. So with my second marriage, it was good and it was good and it was good in the beginning until, obviously there was things that I wasn't seeing in the beginning that wasn't good, but I wasn't putting that out there. But when years started happening and I'm like, I need to stop, like, posting that, oh, I'm so in love with him and this is all great and we're such a happy family, because we're not.
I went through a college course where we brought this up as a subject, and it came down to the fact that, and this, of course, is not everybody, but most couples that start over posting like that is actually an opposite. They start posting what they really wish it was,
yes,
as opposed to what it is.
It's funny, we're on this subject now. So there's a couple that live in Blackfoot, and same thing, like the husband would post these extravagant posts, like, my beautiful wife, I just love her, and God this and God that, and just too much overkill. But in reality, people who actually knew them, myself included, knew their personal life just from when we would see them and they would talk about it. Complete opposite.
Right.
Complete opposite.
It's a different painted picture.
Yes, but they've done it so long that they have to keep that life and keep that lie going for the people who don't truly know them. And that's what I tell my daughter all the time. What you see on, like, Instagram and all those.
On social media, yeah.
It's not always like that.
And we were just talking about this earlier, about how that we have this precedence on how the ideal relationship should look, or the ideal, precursor, where we're not seeing the red flags, they're stripped of it, our what we would want a relationship to look like in movies and in songs. And you hear about all this genuine, to the heart stuff. And I think that's where the kill shot comes in, with these people who want to manipulate or are very narcissistic. They understand that those are your vulnerabilities. They know that that's about you and that's the life you want, but they come in and do the opposite.
Right.
And we almost allow it because we're so vulnerable and we want it so desperately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, like, it's not okay to post your spouse.
Sure.
I think it's great to post your significant other. But it's like when you're posting constantly that all these great things are happening, when in reality it's not happening.
Right.
That is not healthy.
Right. It is not.
Yeah.
That in itself is the red flag.
Yeah.
I think that you're trying to circle back to is, of course, happiness can exist and it can be organic.
Absolutely.
Let it be organic. If it's public, it's public. If it's not, so be it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody said that to me when the second time I was married. Problems happening over and over, and I was, telling her, hey, like, this and this happens, and she's like, but you post there, like, people see him as a good person because you post that he's a good person. You don't think that maybe, like, he's also fooled, like, oh, well, she thinks I'm a great person because she posts and says all these things about me, so he believes it. So he doesn't have to change anything in the background because you're letting everybody know that he's amazing.
Right.
And that was just like, whoa, she is absolutely right. And that's when I stopped. The last 5 years I was married, I was like,
I'm not saying nothing nice about you anymore.
I mean, like, we'd post family pictures and stuff like that, but it wasn't like pages of like, I love you. And
and you always know those people on social media who just overkill it, right?
Putting
like,
it on thick.
It's not normal.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, when you personally know them, it's like 10 times worse because you want to get on there and be all like, you are such a liar,
And I'm a passionate person. Like, when I have something to say, I go off about it. And it's never like, no, it's not true. And so ever since that was brought up to me, and like, when it's bad, it's bad. And when it's good, it's good. Right. And I am so good about that. Like, if it's bad, I will say that it's bad. It's not always beautiful butterflies and roses. I will say how it is.
But I think people can tell, too, when you're being very authentic. And when people know you personally, they know when your posts are authentic. So.
True. That is very true.
Yeah. They'll always know.
Yeah. Because I know, to me, it was a shock. Like, adding Angelica back on social media. Because I had been friends with her and her ex for a long time, and it always seemed like the happy family. I mean, I knew them from school, and then to see them not together, I'm like, what happened? Like, it was crazy because they were such a happy family. I remember the last pictures, like, I had seen as their wedding, like, how beautiful it was, and just, like, it's all gone, And so, yeah.
I know, then you want to be that nosy person. What happened? I want to know. Tell me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. But it's crazy because she does have a good point. Like, when I got her back in my life and I started coming in here more often and we just started talking, and then I kind of just let her know, like, no, this is what really happened. And I remember, like, one of the first things you said was, like, I had a feeling.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, it hits you because it's, like, you can pretend like you're so happy for so long, but deep down you're going home crying every day. You're going home scared. Like, I hated getting off work a minute late, 2 minutes late, 30 minutes, whatever, because I knew that the second that I got home and the second I put that car in park, I knew I was in for it. And it sucked because, having to be like you, like having to cover up, strangulation marks or bruises, like, it hurts a lot more. Because words, you can sometimes forget, bruises fade, but that mental piece that you keep telling yourself, like, maybe I did deserve it because I should have been off on time, or I shouldn't have talked to those people, and it hits you like a ton of bricks because you're just like, well, shoot, and to her point, like, a lot of people still are like, I still can't believe you guys aren't together, like, I didn't even know you were remarried and stuff, and I'm like, well, yeah, like, I don't go and post, that he was such a horrible person all the time. But, like, he would have to come with me everywhere I went. If I had to go to the store to get tampons, he'd have to go with me. And he would have to...
Like you were entrusted.
He would have to have his arm around me or on my side. And if I ran into somebody from school, you get that sudden, like, pinch. And he's just, like, grabbing you. And you're just, like... everything in your power not to show that on your face. Like, it does more harm to you than you think that it does, because then you get home and after the abuse and after the fight, then you're like, I shouldn't have said hi to that person.
At that point, did you feel like, I know because I felt this at some points in my own personal experience, at those points, was there a part of you that felt like he loves me this much, like I'm actually taking this in, although it's, like, super duper unhealthy. Like, he loves me like I'm his possession. Like, I'm the one person he doesn't want to lose. Like, there's some part of you that justifies this unhealthy behavior. Yep. Was that?
Yeah, it's a lot. And it's crazy that you say that because he messaged me a couple days ago and he was like, hey, I found these. Do you want these? And they were all of the kids' bracelets from when they were born and their first haircut and their first tooth, and he had all of that, and I'm like, oh, I thought that you lost that. And it's like, even when my daughter went over there the other night, like, she comes back and she brings back all this stuff that I thought was gone. And then you're just like, why does he still have it then? And then I go back into this, like,
It keeps you coming back.
Yep. And I hate myself for it so bad because then I'm like, what else do you have that's mine?
Yeah. Oh, and you find out in trickles.
And like he's got pictures of my mom, and I'm like, why? Why do you still have this?
Just to hang on. Like, does he have it just to kind of hang on
I
to that
feel
little
like
power
he has
of you?
it, but he's just like, oh, look what I found.
Yeah. I feel like to me, because I've been there with my ex-husband, the gentleman that I'd known since high school, did it to my children. He even took his son's Letterman jacket, and he's like, sorry, you left it at somebody else's house. And we're like, in time, I'm sure this thing's going to show up. But it's just those little morsels that keeps you connected. And, I hate to say, unfortunately, that we have children. I don't want to make that a point because I love my children. I don't like and condone the behavior that has to exist in your manipulation with my children. And that's what ends up happening is that they use the children as a facet, as a pathway to you. Oh, what's going on with this kid so I can connect with you one last time. Yeah. Like this certain man, I blocked him, at least I thought I did, and I get these notifications, and he's still watching TikTok. Thankfully, sends you these notifications that says, oh, this person's been looking at your profile over and over again.
Viewing.
And it was him. I sent a screenshot to my son. I was like, oh my gosh, can you believe this? My youngest son, so I was so excited till he turned 18 because that broke the cycle. At least I felt like the connections with him. I was like, I'm going to have a birthday on your 18th birthday, that I hated to think that I was rushing his life just to get out of this connection. And my son's now 24, and there's still this interchangeable, sorry, I don't mean to take your life, but I completely relate.
Yeah. I was just totally going to say something, and then I think, okay, it came back. So, it's different getting out from a relationship where it wasn't physically from one that was with children. I think like with you, you're away from that. He's still obviously manipulative, and he causes all kinds of trauma and damages to you with your children. Because he wants to keep that connection. With us, it was there, but I feel like for us, like it got worse after the divorce. Yes. Is that correct?
Oh, it is. It's so true. I was. It became an alienation of my children. At that point, how do you ruin a woman or a mother? You go for her children. You rip away the one sanctuary she has, and that is you are a protector by nature, and that's what he kept doing, and even to this day, you have to. He's almost at a godlike status with his children. You're either in with me and you respect me, or you do not, and you are gone. You're out of here.
Yeah. I know it's super hard to talk about because I don't want anybody that's listening to think, okay, if I leave this abusive, if I have children,
is what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen. I'm not going to say it won't because it more than likely will. But we just have to be strong enough to know we don't deserve to be there. And then at least we have boundaries. We can set boundaries when they are not in our lives anymore.
Or understanding that there's relatable. And I'm glad that you circled back to that because it is fearful. Like, I don't want to lose track of, I don't want to lose my children in this process of trying to get better myself in this situation and them. Yeah. It is very scary. Yeah. I mean, I know you almost felt like you had to endure for so long just to maintain your children and your what you have. I'll take that punishment for them so that I don't have to lose them or something happen to them.
Yeah. I'm going to be super transparent and honest about the 10 years that I was married to my ex-husband. The last 3 years has been worse being divorced to him than it was the 10 years I was married. Yeah. I remember the first day he left the house. That was the first time I ever yelled at him. I wanted to kill him. Kill him, just grab him and just strangle him. I almost went to the emergency room because of the anxiety. I started throwing up because of how sick I was. He took my children without telling me where they were going, where they were staying, when they were leaving, nothing. Yep. And then when I text him, why are the children not at the babysitters? Oh, I found a different babysitter. But asked me the day before if it was okay for you to stay another night at the house because you didn't have power and that you couldn't get anything in your name. Where did the children stay? Oh, we still stayed at the apartment with no power, with no water. And I wasn't told that they were leaving.
Right.
I had no idea where my kids were for 24 hours.
Yep.
I have not been away from my kids in the 10 years we were together. I had never been away from my kids. I just never slept away from them. Yeah. And I remember I hated that man that day. Mm-hmm. I wanted him to die. Mm-hmm. I wanted to be the one to kill him. Mm-hmm. I have never been so like sick. I was throwing up because I was so angry when he finally answered my phone call. And I said, let me talk to my children right now. And I was just throwing up. I couldn't speak. And then, but also being told ever since, you know, like before I was still married, like, you're a bad mom, you're a bad mom, you're a bad mom, you're a bad mom. You're a woman first before you're a mom. No, I am a woman and I am a mom.
You can be
both. You can be both. You don't have to be just a mom.
That's right.
I was never a woman to him. I was never his wife. I was always the mother of his children. Yeah. And when I got divorced, I made sure, you know, I am the mother of your children and that is it. And there's, you know, and from that day forward, like it just, him just trying to make my life miserable from that day forward. And it's always been, you're just a horrible mom. You do this. But it does get better with your children. Like, I know my children see it. They tell me all the time how much they love me, how much every time they're like, oh, it wasn't like my dad said. And that just puts the biggest just smile on my face, knowing that I don't have to say anything.
Right.
They figure it out on their own.
Yeah.
You know, I just had a year ago a memory pop up. My son got his, I left him at the barber shop because I had to go do something really fast. When I come back, he had an M on his hair that he asked to get, what is it called? Like a design. Mm-hmm. And then he was afraid to show it to me. And he goes, his barber is like, so we have a surprise for you. We don't know if you're going to be mad because he thinks you're going to be mad. And I said, why? Like, what happened? He's like, okay, have him turn. So he turns and I was like, oh, well, his last name is Maria. And he goes, it's an M for you, Mom.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And I like just wanted to cry so much. And I was like, oh, I thought it was an M for your last name. And he's like, no, it's for you, Mom, because I love you.
That's so cute.
And I just was like, wow, like he loves me that much, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's going to be the kid that gets my name tattooed on him.
Yes, right.
Although we've already had this conversation, you know, it's sad because my kids are going through the same thing I did. And I see it every day and I talk to them every time they bring it up. Hey, my dad didn't like this. My dad said this. My dad said that. I have to remind them, you're your own person. You get to choose what you want, what you like. And it's not up to other people.
That's right.
But
it's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He went home that weekend with his dad. And when he came back, he said, Mom, my dad didn't like my hair. And I said, why? What? And then the girls, he said, that's for animals. Only animals brand themselves like that.
What did you just tell your son?
Yeah.
And yeah. So it's sad. Like, my kids have to go through that, you know?
It's like sitting back helpless.
Yeah.
I know. I watch it all the time and I'm like, oh, this is hard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be hard.
It is hard. It's hard
In your
because
line of
they
work.
don't, they're, in a lot of cases, they're seen, not heard. You know, you don't have a voice and you obey. And it's tough because they do see some of this sickness and they do call it out and they are told,
Yeah.
don't say it.
Yeah. And, you know, like, sometimes I wonder, I'm like, have I ever done things wrong in my relationship? We're not perfect.
We're human.
We're all
We make
not
mistakes.
perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm sure my exes have a lot of things to say about me as well.
Right.
You know, but I know that I've never like intentionally done things to hurt them, physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, I don't do those things. I've been in a healthy relationship where semi-healthy, I guess, where there was no manipulation, there was no abusive, like abuse, talking to me abusive, where they didn't treat me like I was less, where there was support. So I do believe one day, you know, there will be somebody that I find and that will treat me the way I deserve to be treated, because I feel like I treat people with kindness and how they deserve to be treated. So I don't know. I mean, I know you're in a good relationship now. And
yes, my little nerd. My little nerd. I love him to pieces. He's just so patient, and it's so crazy because, you know, going back to even before I met my kids' dad, like, I probably wouldn't even look twice at my husband right now, because he's just a big nerd, and he's so weird. Like, yeah, he dresses really fancy at work, and then I get like the Walmart version where, you know, he wears shoes.
You get the Temu version.
Yes, I get the Temu version of Walmart when he's home, but it's just like, I get treated so different. Like,
was it foreign to you at first? Like,
it was, and I remember I'd be like, I don't deserve this. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And he was just so patient with me, and like, he, you know, took his time. Like, I would flinch a lot, or I would automatically get like, you know, like, I don't know what you would call that. It's like a flinch, but like, yeah. And it took me like almost 2 full years for me to completely stop doing that. And he was just so patient with me. He'd be like, one day you're going to look at me and you're not going to think that I'm him. One day you're going to look at me and you're going to be like, wow, this is what it truly feels like to have somebody love me for me. And it's like with her, like, I'm always with her all the time, and he'll be like, when are you bringing my wife home? Like, he's not like, how long are you going to be out, blah, blah, blah. He's like, when are you going to bring my wife home, or what are you girls going to go do?
Yeah. Or take care of her.
Yeah, he always tells her, take care of my wife for me. If you guys need me, call me. Like, he's just so genuinely different. And even with my kids, like, he is so patient. He never yells at them. Like, when I'm crazy with them and like they're in deep trouble, like, he's just like, give him 5 minutes. And
your voice of reason.
Yeah. And he's just like, tone it down. But he's just so different. He's so kind. But it takes you so long to accept that you
deserve it.
Yeah.
You know, it does come across like we're damaged goods, right? Like, we've gone through this, and the next person pays dividends as to the trauma that we've gone through. And it's tough. It's tough to break out of that shell, and it takes that trusted person again to be like, it's okay. Like, we're going to go through this. It's going to be different, and I'm going to be right here with you, and I'm going to call you out when things aren't really like that. And, you know, I think we cower down to those old emotions that we were suppressed to. I know I did that recently with my new relationship. I'm like, so can I, asking permission if I could do something to my body, like getting a tattoo. And I was like, why am I asking permission? Like he like owns me, owns my body. No, we communicate. I think you put that correctly, is we can communicate about it. It's not an ownership.
No, I think, like, you know, getting a haircut or going out with friends, like, it should always be communicated. I don't think you should ever have to ask for permission. Your partner should be able to know where you're at and what you're doing, you know, your intentions, not because of a control thing, but just because there's definitely a difference between control and then communication.
Yeah, absolutely.
For me, it was always like, I'm not just putting this outfit on to oppress other people. Like, I'm putting this outfit on because I love it. Like, I'm not looking for other people's attention. Like, I think so many things had us second guessing ourselves for a very long time.
Yeah. And I think that's what I love about opening up 1614, like with you, and just people that genuinely love the idea of helping others that are hurting so bad. And I love what we're doing with the podcast, and I love bringing you on board and giving us your perspective and, you know, your trials and triumphs that you've gone through personally, and like what you see in people that are broken.
It's
and
so
I think
hard.
That it is
just
so...
like, I don't ever see that we're over, because we've been there, right? Like, God, let me save you. Come on, I feel like that maybe is the healer in me, but we've healed. We can heal together. We can triumph through this, and we can regain and reclaim who we are.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I just love is like we get people constantly on a daily basis that are like, hey, do you guys have counseling open? Or hey, like, are you guys open? And unfortunately, no, we're not. But this is why we have these podcasts, and this is why we have beautiful people like you that come in, because then they feel like they're not by themselves and they don't need to wait for something to be open to be able to talk about it.
Oh, reach out. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I have that all the time. My boyfriend's like, this is the life of having a therapist as a significant other. You're always helping everybody else. And I'm like, no, but I think this is my mission. I think this is my calling in life. Like, this is, I can literally come in here and talk to Maria for hours or to you and be like, hey, this is my whole life story, or this is what I've gone through. I can relate to this.
Yep.
I completely feel like I'm one of those people who went through this life in college and training because I've been there. I've been on the side of drug abuse. I've been on physical abuse and all of these challenges where it's not just me learning it from a book. I've been there, done that. I understand what it feels like. Yeah. And I'm glad that you have this for everyone else out there that needs this, that sounds really familiar, or I can relate. If that is the case, keep listening, keep in touch with these gals. They have got the center in on this, and they can guide you to that help, to those resources.
Yeah. Well, I think that about wraps up our
thank you for having me
episode.
Yeah.
But I'm really glad you were here, Mindy, and
thank you
give us your
much.
perspective and what you do.
And quick question before we head off, like, so with what you do, do they have to get like recommended to you or like a referral to see you, or can these?
So I have an online website, and I'm also on Facebook with Behavioral Therapy and Care. It looks like a child with all kinds of stuff going on in their brain, rainbows, toys, and all sorts of things. Reach out to me. They do go through an assessment process. They have to meet the criteria through the assessment, and at that point, if I can't help you, I can find people who are able to.
Beautiful.
So, but yeah, it is quite a lot of these services are in who do you know and who can help me find those services and link up with those. So yeah, a lot of times it's the behavioral issues, a diagnosis like autism or severe mental health disorders. Absolutely, there's help.
Perfect. Anything that you got going on? Any questions?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Perfect.
I'm glad you joined us.
Yeah, I'm really happy you joined us. This was calm and it was just peaceful. So
we can't wait for the next episode.
Absolutely.
Yes. We'd love to have you back
Keep
another
growing.
time.
Keep believing in these women. Keep believing in each other.
Yes, absolutely. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
It Begins With Us is a supporting podcast for 1614 Revival Foundation.
Please leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever possible. That really helps the show reach more people.
You can follow us on social media. The links are in the show notes. Do not hesitate to reach out. See you next time.